this is Carla and welcome back to the studio, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Throwback Thursday. So for this Thursday, I'm going to be carrying on with the Valentine projects. And so for this episode, I'll be featuring the Sweet Conversations bundle. This is the Photopolymer stamp set, and it's coordinating Sweethearts dies. And I will also be using it was part of a suite of product, the Sweet Talk DSP. Now this is a DSP reference sheet that I did create so I could see all of the patterns of the paper, both front and back sides. And then I also punched out with a 1-inch punch the coordinating cardstock colors. It makes it really easy to design my cards. I have everything in front of me to see what the designs of the paper is and what colors are in it. So for my first card, let me bring in my cardstock pieces. I have a piece of real red. This measures 8.5 by 5.5 and it's scored at 4 1/4. I have a piece of Pool Party. This measures 5 1/4 by 4. I have a piece of the Sweet Talk DSP. This measures 4 1/4 by 4. And then I have another piece that measures 4 by 3 and 4 by 3/4, and that's just the opposite side of this piece of paper. I then have a 2 by 2 piece of Saffron, a 2 3/4 by 2 3/4 scrap of basic white, and a 3 by 2 scrap of basic white. So I'm going to start off and I'm going to fold and burnish my card base, and I'll set that aside. And then for my my piece of Pool Party, I'm also going to, let me bring in the other items that I'll be using. So for my Pool Party, I will be using the Tasteful Textile 3D embossing folder. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to set it aside. All my embossing and die cutting will be done at the same time. I then have, let's see, so our 2 pieces of DSP, I'm going to set those aside because those are going to go on the card base when we're ready for them. Now for my Saffron piece, I'm also going to bring in the Dotty Hearts embossing folders. These are the smaller folders that can be used with the mini Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. And I'm going to use this pattern right here for my Saffron, so we'll set that aside. I then will, with this piece of basic white, I will be die cutting it with this die, and this comes from the Stylish Shapes dies, and this is currently in our annual catalog. So I'm going to set that aside. So now for my other piece of scrap, I am going to stamp my hearts, and for this project I'll be using the Blushing Bride, Granny Apple Green, and Highland Heather inks. So I'm going to open up my Blushing Bride, and I'll ink this up, and on this half I'll stamp this heart, and then I will bring in my Highland Heather, and I will also bring in my Stampin' scrub, and I'm going to clean my stamp before I put it in the Highland Heather ink, and then make sure that's dry. And I'll ink this up, and I'll stamp one right up at the top here. Okay, I'll close that up. Now for these 2 hearts, I will use this heart die to cut them out. This is from the Sweethearts set of dies. So I'm going to bring in my sheet. I can talk. Yes, I can talk. So let me bring in my Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine and let me do the die cutting and the embossing, and I will be right back. Okay, so let me bring in my pieces. So I'm going to take this embossed pool party piece and I'm going to adhere this to my real red card base. Okay, and I'll just center that. I was sad when this embossing folder, this is the, which one is this one? It was the Tasteful Textile 3D embossing folder. I really like this one. It has that really nice subtle design too. I was sad when they retired that. So I'm going to bring in my larger piece of my DSP. I'm going to add some glue to the back of this. And I'm going to place this right about, let's see, move it up a little bit, like right about here. Okay, and then I'm going to bring in the other piece. And then I'm going to add this one right next to it, and then down just a little bit. And make sure that's straight. Okay, and then I'm going to bring in this embossed saffron piece, and I'm going to add that right about here. Okay, and then I'll set that aside, and then my hearts as well. Actually, for my hearts, what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring in my Stampin' Dimensionals, and I'm going to add one to the back of these, and we'll set those aside. Now I'm going to bring in my circle. Let me close up my glue. So on my circle, I'm going to bring in my greeting that says Happy Valentine's Day and my Granny Apple Green ink. And I'm going to ink this up. And I'm going to stamp this down towards the bottom in a spot where the Happy Valentine's Day just fits in the circle. So it's not in the middle, and of course it's not at the very bottom. Just lined up in the spot where it fits in between these two stitched lines around the circle. Okay, so we're going to close this up, and then the other thing I'm going to bring in this red twine. This comes from the Country Club twine combo pack. Also had Night and Navy, Garden Green, and Basic Black. Now, my sample card, I had actually wrapped it around here and tied it as a knot. Well, can you take a guess what I forgot to do before I glued that down? So we're just going to modify it a little bit, and I'm going to create a bow instead. Okay, and then let me bring in my ribbon scissors, and I'll trim that. I have one pair of scissors that cuts paper, one that does like ribbon and trim, and another that'll cut anything that may be sticky, like my dimensional edges. And okay, so now what do I need? I need my dimensionals, and I'm going to add those to the back of my circle. We'll remove these backings. And then I'm going to add that right here. And then I will bring in my glue dots. Now these are glue dots that are from a past paper pumpkin kit. They work just as well as the ones that we sell in our annual catalog. So I am going to add, let's see where we're going to put this. I'm going to add it right down here. I'm going to add 2 of them and remove the paper backings. And I'll add my bow right there. And we'll need to trim these down a little bit more. Okay. And then for my hearts, I'm going to place them on this circle. Take the other one. Place that right there. Now I'm going to bring in my Wink of Stella. And I'm going to add some on these hearts. Okay. And then I got one more element I'm going to put on here. I'm going to bring in the loose silver sequins. These are currently in our annual catalog. And I'm going to bring in my Take Your Pick tool. And I'm going to remove this pointy end because I'm going to use that to help me place the sequins. So I'm going to bring in my liquid glue, and I'm going to add a couple of drops in a few places, not a very big one, just a little one. Just randomly add some. Probably a little too much right there. And then one right down here. Okay. And then I'm just going to pick up, oops, make sure that I got them the right way. think I'm going to add one there. And then another one there. Now, when I put these down, you can kind of see a little bit of that glue, but the glue will dry clear, so you won't even notice that. So we got some bigger ones and some smaller ones in here. So I want to, let's take a couple and just put it out so I could see them a little bit better. Okay, so I'm going to take a bigger one. And I'll add that right here. And then I have, let's see, which way does this one go? Ones that are just a little bit smaller. Okay, once you turn that way, you want where the cup of the sequin is pointed up rather than down. So there is our first card. So on to our second. Okay, so for my second card, I have a piece of Blushing Bride cardstock. This measures 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. I have a piece of Real Red cardstock. This measures 5 1/4 by 4. I have a piece of the Sweet Talk DSP. This measures 5 1/4 by 1 3/4. I have another pattern of the Sweet Talk DSP, and this measures 5 1/4 by 1/2 inch. And then I have 3 pieces of basic white. These are scrap that measure 3 by 3 each. So I'm going to start off with folding and burnishing my card base. And I'll set that aside. Now for my piece of Real Red cardstock, I want to bring in another embossing folder. This is the gingham embossing folder. This was actually part of this whole suite of products. So I'm going to set that aside. And then for this one piece of DSP, I'm going to set that aside. We're going to do some stamping on that one. And then for these 3 pieces of the basic white, I'm going to use the stylish shapes dies again, and I'm going to cut these out with this square. So I'll set that aside. Now I'm going to bring in my scrap paper because I'm going to do a little bit of stamping on this piece. So the colors of ink I'm using on this card is Blushing Bride and my Memento Tuxedo Black ink. So I'm going to use my black ink, and I'm going to use this striped image from the stamp set, and I'm going to add some stripes onto this really thin piece that has the Blushing Bride color. It has kind of like a watercolor type look to it. And I'm just going to stamp these over the paper just to give it some dimension, something a little different. So this whole card will be in pink, black, and red. So what's nice about this is that, you know, if the distance between the lines is too much, it's okay. If it's too close, it's okay as well. So there we go, we've got that. And so that's what that looks like. So I'll set that aside. And let me move that stamp. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring in my Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine, and I'm going to do my embossing and die cutting, and I will be right back. Okay, so let me bring in my pieces. And I apologize because I ended up knocking the phone when I went to go and move something, and hopefully you really didn't notice when I go to speed up that part of the video. Okay, so what I'm going to do is for this piece of the Real Red, I'm going to bring in my DSP, and I'm bringing my glue, and I'm going to add some to this strip that I stamped on. Whoa, 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 whoa. After I put my finger in it. Okay. So I'm going to add this piece about here. And hold it straight. Now there is a little bit that overhangs. It's okay. We'll go ahead and we'll trim that. Just move it up a little bit. Okay. And then I'm going to take this piece, add some glue to this. Then I'm going to add this right up against the piece that I put down. Make sure it's lined up at the top. Okay. And press that down. Okay, so I'm done with this glue. Now I'm going to bring in my little guillotine trimmer. This was a celebration offering a few years ago. So I'm going to take this piece. I'm going to just line it up against the blade. I'm going to bring the blade down a little bit. I'm just going to line that up against it and then cut, and I'll remove all that extra paper. Get what's stuck on there. Okay, so now that's done. Okay, and then I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to adhere it to my card base. You can see that that's probably going to come out. We don't want that oozing out. And I'm going to center this on my card base. Like so. Okay, now we're done with the glue for our projects. Okay, so then on these three pieces of white, I'm going to bring in my scrap paper because I'm going to be doing some Stampin' Off. So I'm going to bring in that same heart that I used. Wait a minute, actually, I don't think that's the heart I used. There's actually 3 different sized hearts, and it's the larger one. Yeah, it's the larger one that I used. Okay, so I'm going to put that on a block. I'm going to bring in my Blushing Bride ink again. I'm going to ink up this heart and I'm going to stamp off. And I'm just going to stamp this in the center of each one of these squares. So I just want a subtle image of that heart in the background because I'll be stamping over it. Okay, and we're done with our blushing bright ink. And then I'm going to bring in my black. We don't need this anymore. So on my pieces, I brought in the stamps, the X, the O, and the one that says, happy to have you in my life. So I'm going to start with the X, ink that up, and I'll stamp that right over the heart and in the center of that square. And for my O, I will stamp that over this heart. Okay. And then I'll bring in my greeting, ink that up, and I'll stamp that over heart for this middle one. Okay. So now let me bring in my dimensionals. And I'm going to add something to the back of these. Okay, now let me bring in my other scissors. I'm going to use some of these pieces along the edge. So, okay. So for this, I'm going to line these up, and I found that the easiest way to do that was with my T-square ruler. So I'm going to remove these backings. Okay. I'm going to put this right, I'm going to butt it, the top part right on top of my card. And I want my X first. So I want to determine where I'm going to place this. I want to leave a little bit of the border. Okay, stop moving. Move this over just a little bit. Okay, and I'm going to continue to hold that, and then I'm going to put the O next. So that way I get them even going this way, and then once I put those top and bottom pieces in, I can come in with the center one and it'll all line up. Okay, so for our last part, I'm going to bring in the iridescent rhinestone basic jewels. These are currently in our annual catalog, and these were actually part of this suite of product. So I'm going to take some of my larger ones, and I'm going to add a few of them onto my card. And we'll add one right down here. These are, you can kind of see through these, so when you put them on the paper, you can kind of see the image underneath it, and it's pretty cool. So that is our second card. So let me go ahead and remove this out of the way, and let me bring in my other card that we did. So here is our first card. Got a little bit of an eclectic feel to it. And all I did was I just utilized all the colors that are in this piece of DSP here. Really cute card. And then here's our second one. I just kept it with the pink, the red, and the black. So I hope you like today's cards. And if you did, please give the video a thumbs up. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the channel. It does help me in building it and also building my Stampin' Up! Business. So I thank you for joining me, and y'all have a blessed one. Bye-bye.